Welcome to This Explainer. Building a successful tech startup is honestly a lot like constructing a high-performance engine. You need the absolute right mechanics in place, the precise amount of financial fuel injected at exactly the right moments, and skilled drivers behind the wheel to keep the whole thing from blowing up. And as we're going to see, a lot of them do blow up. Today, we're going completely under the hood. We're breaking down the startup journey using hard data to show you exactly how these companies evolve, how they get funded, and crucially, the lethal traps that cause the vast majority of them to crash and burn.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the startup growth lifecycle, look at funding sources, explore the traps of premature scaling and the blitz scaling gamble, and finally, wrap up with why mentors matter most. Let's dive in.
All right, part one, the startup growth lifecycle. Let's take a look at the mechanics of the engine. What's really fascinating here is that a startup's maturity isn't measured by how long it's been around, but by specific operational milestones. It operates through predictable, distinct developmental phases. So, it kicks off in the vision phase. It's pre-product, pre-revenue, really just an idea where the founder is defining the problem. From there, it shifts into the seed phase, which is all about building that minimum viable product, or MVP, and proving product-market fit. Once that fit is locked in, we hit the early stage, executing a go-to-market strategy to drive revenue. And if that works out, the engine reaches the late stage to scale aggressively and optimize those unit economics, ultimately aiming for an exit, like an IPO or an acquisition.
This entire journey from idea to global impact is basically a highly synchronized dance. Your goals, your revenue, and your key performance indicators have to align perfectly at every single stage. You can't exactly expect massive profitability when you're still tinkering with a prototype, right? And conversely, you really shouldn't be doing basic problem analysis when you're supposed to be in your heavy growth phase. Everything has its precise season.
Moving right along to part two, funding sources. This is all about injecting capital at the right time. To jump from one phase to the next without flooding the engine, you obviously need capital, but the amount has to match your specific risk profile. The absolute crucial takeaway here is context. Every specific dollar amount raised is explicitly tied to a functional purpose. At the pre-seed stage, you're maybe raising $10,000 to $500,000 from friends, family, or angels just to define the idea. But by the time you hit Series A, you're raising millions from venture capital firms specifically to scale your go-to-market strategy. The capital isn't just some giant pile of money to spend however you want. It's a precisely calculated injection designed to push the business to the very next operational milestone.
Which brings us to part three, the premature scaling trap, or, how to completely blow the engine.
Because what happens when you pour way too much fuel into the engine before the mechanics are actually ready to handle that kind of speed? It's pretty much the ultimate question in the venture world. We're talking millions of dollars, brilliant minds, massive markets, yet so many completely collapse. And the answer doesn't lie in bad luck or even bad products. It lies in a single, devastating pitfall that traps founders who are just in a massive rush to win.
The Startup Genome Project analyzed over 3,200 high-growth tech startups and found that a staggering 70 to 74% of them fail because of one specific affliction. 70%. That makes it the single most common cause of poor performance across the board.
That affliction? Premature scaling. Essentially, this is scaling your business completely out of order. A startup has an actual traction stage based on real customer response, and it has behavioral dimensions that the founders control, like team size or product infrastructure. Premature scaling happens when you aggressively hire specialized executives, or over-engineer this incredibly complex product, or blow your budget on marketing way before you've actually validated that anyone wants to buy what you're selling. It's kind of like hiring a massive enterprise sales team to sell a product that's still just a sketch on a napkin.
And honestly, the data on this is just brutal. 93% of startups that scale prematurely never even break $100,000 a month in revenue. Actually, 0 of them pass the 100,000 user mark. They act big before they are big, writing almost 3.5 times more code than they need to in the discovery phase and hiring teams 3 times the size of consistent startups. And that almost inevitably leads to massive layoffs. Startups that scale properly, matching their behavior to their actual traction, end up growing 20 times faster. So if you're building a startup, remember this. Patience in the validation phase isn't just good advice. It is mathematically essential to your survival.
All right, let's move to part 4, the blitz scaling gamble, the massive risk of uncontrolled growth.
So standard fast scaling prioritizes efficiency and sustainable unit economics in a known market. Blitz scaling, on the other hand, deliberately sacrifices those sustainable economics for pure, raw speed.
It is an aggressive land grab. You operate at a massive, bleeding loss just to capture market share and user data faster than anyone else out there. And because you're completely ignoring efficiency, you're burning through capital at an incredible rate, demanding a massive reserve of funds just to survive your own inevitable mistakes.
This leads us to a highly dangerous mutation called negative blitzscaling. In this zealous pursuit of growth, founders shift their focus from actual value creation to just pumping up their valuation, which is a lethal distraction. They take massive influxes of investor cash and use it to subsidize their products at a severe structural loss, desperately trying to force market dominance. But when the era of easy capital dried up, tech companies running this playbook, famous examples being WeWork and Hopin, faced complete collapse. Why? Well, underneath those sky-high valuations, they completely lacked a profitable core business to fall back on.
I think this quote perfectly captures the stark reality of this strategy. Unless your product has a built-in mechanism for network effects or a crystal-clear pathway to capitalize on economies of scale, throwing billions of dollars at an uncertain market isn't growth. It's merely an acceleration to perdition. It is, quite simply, financial suicide disguised as ambition.
Finally, Part 5. Why mentors matter most. The human drivers of success. Because look, you can have the absolute best engine and the most expensive fuel, but without experienced drivers, you are going to crash. The data surrounding the impact of mentorship is definitive. Founders who surround themselves with helpful mentors raise 7 times more money and achieve 3.5 times better user growth. But here is the most striking statistic of the whole bunch. In the entire startup genome dataset, exactly 0 scaling startups successfully raised money without having helpful mentors. 0. Investors might provide the fuel, but the mentors navigate the map.
And the findings clearly show us that the flexibility of a founding team, their willingness to listen, to track metrics effectively, and to pivot when necessary are the real foundational traits of success. Mentors don't just give advice, they provide the critical reality check that prevents a visionary founder from driving their finely tuned engine straight off a cliff.
So as you look at the startup journey ahead, remember it's an ecosystem of precise mechanics. Mastering the specific stages of growth, respecting the limits of your financial fuel, resisting that ego-driven trap of scaling before you're ready, and finding the right mentors to guide you, that's what truly differentiates a billion-dollar unicorn from a collapsed unicorpse. The speed of your growth only matters if you're actually driving in the right direction. So ask yourself, are you building a resilient engine, or are you just rushing to hit the gas? Thanks for joining us for this explanator. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.